Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this gorgeous granny in a spiral blanket. If English isn't your first language, you can click on this gear on the video and scroll through to find your preferred dialect. And this easy-to-follow step-by-step crochet tutorial is available in both right and left-handed, so please check the description box below to find the version that suits you best. And if you want to follow along with a written pattern, all of my patterns are written in plain English and available on my website, secretyarnery.com. This super easy pattern is fantastic. There's no joining, there's no stepping up. We are starting and working in a spiral, and it is actually a flat circle. I show you how to do it step by step. So don't worry about it being a perfect circle. It's totally going to be. We just don't have to bother with doing that join and step up. We're just going to do this cute little thing at the end, and nobody is going to notice. The finished size of my blanket is 4 feet in diameter, and I used a bit less than 4 cakes. I could have made it bigger, but I wanted to end on this dark purple color right here. To make your spiral in a granny blanket, I used Cakes DK for mine. It's a size 3 DK weight yarn, and I used 4 cakes, so that is 600 grams. I'll put that other information for you there up on the screen. For this last round here, for that edging, that cute little border, I used Super Baby. So I just used about 50 grams, not even, maybe 30 grams of Super Baby. And Super Baby is the solid color that goes along with Cakes DK. You'll also need a handful of stitch markers and a needle for sewing in your ends, and a piece of yarn about half the width of your blanket. We'll be using this to mark our rounds, and also a crochet hook. So whatever yarn you're using, just use the hook size recommended on the yarn label. For me, I'm using a 5mm crochet hook. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. To make your round granny square blanket in a spiral, we're going to start by making a chain 3 ring. You could, of course, use a magic ring, but we don't have to shrink it completely shut in the center of our blanket. So a chain 3 ring works just great. So make a slip knot and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to go into that very first chain we made right there and make our ring. So just pop your hook in. And then take a minute to get yourself situated. We want to form a U shape underneath our hook. So hold your tail along your work with that little U shape and hold it open with your finger and thumb. And slip stitch to form a ring. I'm still holding it open. And chain 2. 1 and 2. So that counts as our first stitch, our half double crochet. And we want to go into the center of our ring, right where we're holding it open, working over our tail, and make 2 half double crochets. There is 1, and here is 2. So that counts as our first 3 stitches. Chain 1 and make 3 double crochets. So for the rest of this round, we're doing double crochets. So sets of 3 double crochets with a chain 1 in between. So just that little set of 3 double crochets. We need a total of 6 sets. So 3 double crochets, and chain 1. If you run out of room, we want all of our stitches laying side by side. So hold your first stitches and your last stitches and just pull that ring and tail out of the center. Just like that. You'll get a lot more room for your stitches to lay down nice and flat. So you can pause the video, keep working along. You want 6 sets of 3 double crochets, also including that half double we started. So 6 sets of stitches. So there we are right back where we started. Now get a contrasting color of yarn, a yarn color that is not part of the yarn you're using for your blanket, and grab a stitch marker. And we just want to tie this onto a stitch marker because we're going to make a little anchor. So just a regular little school knot and pop a stitch marker into it. Turn your work over. I'm just going to pop it into a couple of those stitches. It doesn't totally matter. We just want to hold this working yarn or this marking yarn somewhere so we don't pull it all the way through. Now turn your work over. And now into this second chain we made, right there, the top of that chain 2, we are going to do 1 half double crochet. There's 1. Take your long strand of your marking yarn and just bring it over the top. That's going to mark where our join is. And now pop over to this next space. And we're going to make 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 and 3 more double crochets into that same space. Find the next space after those 3 stitches, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're doing the same thing in each of these spaces for this round. So we're kind of doing a corner, but it's not a corner. We're going to call it an increase, but it's the same as a corner for a granny square. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets all into that same space. And if I'm going too fast or too slow, you can adjust me just by hitting that gear on this video and slowing me down or speeding me up. So into each of these chain spaces, we are going to be doing an increase. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets into each of these spaces. So there's my 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 more double crochets into the very same space. So we're just working all the way around, doing the same thing into each of these spaces. You can pause the video and work your way around 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets into each of those chain 1 spaces all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get back to your marking yarn, your contrasting yarn right here. Now when you get back to your marking yarn, we're going to work into that very same space, right where our yarn is. So go into that space and make your 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Bring your yarn up and over, just like that. You want to move it a bit to the side. We're going to go ahead and put 3 more double crochets into that same spot. So chain 1, get that yarn over to the side, and 3 double crochets into that same space. 1, 2, and 3. Now for this round, we're just going to be doing 3 double crochets into each of these spaces all the way around. So into our center of our increases and into the center of our sides. Each space is getting 3 double crochets. No chaining, nothing fancy. 3 double crochets into each space. So just regular shells. So 3 double crochets into each space. 1, 2, and 3. So you can pause the video, keep working around. 3 double crochets into each space, all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get back to our contrast yarn. So now I'm back to where my contrasting yarn is, or my marking yarn, and you can see it's kind of, well, it's very dished up because we did not do any increases. So when your work, and this goes for your whole blanket, but I'll also show you what it looks like when your blanket's bigger. But when you flatten out your blanket and this outside edge stays up like that, like a little saucer, a little dish, that means you are ready to do an increase round. So I'll walk you through it, but that's what it would be looking like as we go through. So we're going to be doing regular rounds where it's just 3 double crochets into each space, and then we're going to do increase rounds. I'm going to alternate those to grow our blanket. I'm going to go into that space right where our yarn is and do my 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Bring that yarn up and over. And into the next space right over here, I'm going to do an increase. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets into the next space. So there's 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets. All into the same space right there. Now into the next space, we are going to just do 3 double crochets. So we're going to alternate it for this round, 3 double crochets and then an increase. So how I keep track of that in my mind, I do regular, increase, regular, increase, or reg, ink, all the way around. So that was our reg. The next one is ink, an increase. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets all into the same space. That's your increase. Into the next space, regular, and the space after that, ink. So regular, ink, all the way around. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 3 double crochets into one space and an increase into the next, all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get back to where your marking yarn is, right over here. So there we are back at our marking yarn, and we're going to be tossing our yarn up, but I'm going to show you how to alternate it so our marking yarn goes straight out from the center, straight to one side. So if you look into the space down below where our yarn is coming from, it came from after this set of 3. We did our set of 3 and then we moved our yarn. So for the next time, we're going to put it before. So we're alternating flipping our yarn before we work into the space or after we work into the space. So flip your yarn up before and into that space, 3 double crochets. And now for this round, we're going to be doing regular, increase. Regular, increase all the way around. So I've done my first regular. So we're going to do another regular into that next space. So 3 double crochets. 2 and 3. And into the next space, an increase. Increases, 3 double crochets, chain 1 and 3 double crochets all into that same space. So there's our 3, our chain 1, and 3 more double crochets. Regular, increase. So 3 double crochets. 3 double crochets into the next space. And an increase into the third space. 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets is our increase. So there's our 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets. So you can pause the video and keep working around. We'll meet back when we get to our marking yarn right over here. but you're going to be doing regular, regular increase, regular, regular increase, regular, regular increase, all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get back to your marking yarn or your contrast yarn right over here. Now, when we get back to our marking yarn, we can look what happened in those spaces down below, and we moved our yarn up before those stitches. Do you see that, Shell? We moved the yarn up before, so we're going to move our yarn up after. So wrap your yarn 3 double crochets into the same space where our marking yarn is, and move your yarn up. If you have a hard time seeing if you moved your yarn up before or after, you could also just keep track of it on a piece of paper and write before, after, before, after, before, after, so that you know what you're doing with your working yarn. That being said, this is just an idea. It does not have to be exact because this pattern is very, very forgiving, and it doesn't have to be totally exactly. If you have extra stitches, extra 3 stitches, or you're short 3 stitches, it is going to be absolutely fine because the blanket is just so forgiving, or this pattern is so forgiving. So bring your yarn up. And now for this round, for the next 2 rounds, we're going to be going and just doing 3 double crochets into each space. So we're going to do 2 rounds of just regular stitches. Regular meaning just 3 double crochets into each space, all the way around. We're going to do that for 2 rows, but I'll meet you back when we get to our marking yarn so I can show you that flip again. So pause the video, work all the way around. I'll meet you for the flip, and then you're going to do another round. So a total of 2 rounds of regular stitches, and then we're ready to do an increase round. So let's get going with just 2 rows of regular stitches. Now we're back where our marking yarn is, and we can look down into that space down below, and we can see that it came from after our stitches. Can you see that? So it came, there's our stitches from underneath. So you can kind of go 2 rows down. So it's in this space here, and then above these little chiclets, it's after those chiclets. So now we're going to move it before. So we're just alternating before and after. So 3 double crochets into that next space. And then our yarn has been moved up, our marking yarn. And you can also see how it's dishing up. It's getting like not enough stitches around the edge. It's getting tight. Yes, we want that. We're going to do it for 1 more row or 1 more round. So pause the video, keep working around 1 more time, regular stitches into each space, and I'll meet you when we get back to our marking yarn. Now back at our working yarn, we can take a look what we did with that yarn below. So this is where it came from 2 rows down. So it came from after. Then we did before. So now we want to do after again. So I'm going to keep it out of the way and do my 3 double crochets into that space. And then flip it up and over. And you can see mine's all scoopy, very saucery, very dishy. That means we are ready to do an increase round. So this is going to be round 8. And we're going to be doing regular, regular increase, regular, regular increase. So into the next space. So I'm going to count this first shell as my first regular. So I'm going to do another regular. And into the next, an increase. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets all into the same space. Just like that. So for this round, regular, regular increase, regular, regular increase, all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to our yarn. when you get back to your marking yarn or your contrast yarn, I am scheduled to be doing an increase into this stitch, and I'm going to do an increase. If you are working on your pattern and well, it's your pattern, you get to decide. For me, if it's an increase around and there's a choice of doing an extra increase or just getting that increase in where it should be on one side, but it's a bit closer on the other, I'm cool with that. It doesn't matter for your pattern. So now for your marking yarn, down here, it went after, it went before, it went after. So we're going to do it before. Just bring it over the top of your work and do your next stitch. If it's an increase for you, go for it. If your pattern works out differently, that's fine. I'm just going to work mine with that little bit of an extra increase there. Just like that. So now we are ready to do 2 rows of just regular 3 double crochets. So 3 double crochets into each space. All the way around, we're going to do that for 2 rows. If you want to keep track of your last increase or when you get to stop doing that or where to count back from, you can always just pop a stitch marker into that increase or any increase where that join is or we're going to finish up. And just make sure you have 2 rows on top of that last increase all the way around. So pause the video, 2 rows of just regular stitches all the way around, and I'll meet you back when we get to our marking yarn right over here. So we are ready to start round 11 if we're counting our rounds, and we're going to put a stitch marker every 10th round just so we know about how many rows we have done or how many rounds we've done. Just so when you're looking back, you don't have to keep counting all of your rows. So to count your rows, I'm just going to do it a little bit before our join. Start in the center. So there is round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we just finished round 10. I'm going to pop a stitch marker around one of those double crochets, just in the middle of one of those rows right there, to mark that we have completed 10 rounds. Now that's probably easier to show you on this one. Just so when I'm counting, I just count by tens and I know how many rounds I have done of my blanket. So 10, 20, 30, I'm almost getting close to 40 on this one right here. So that just helps us know how many rounds we've done just to keep track of it. And now our blanket, you can see it's starting to dish up again. And by dish up, I mean it curls up on the edges. We can, of course, press it flat, but it still kind of comes up on one side. So that's how you know it is time for an increase round. So when you've finished your 2 rounds of just regular stitches, we're going to flip our yarn again, our marking yarn. So it came in before, it came out after, it's going to go over before, just alternating that flip, and start your 3 double crochets into that next space. So our increase rounds, we're going to do 2 regulars and an increase. So I've done my first regular, so 1 more regular, so 3 double crochets into the next space. And into the next, an increase. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets all into that next space. And I can pause the video and keep working along, doing a regular increase, regular increase, all the way around, and I will meet you when you get back closer to where our marking yarn is, right over here. So back at our contrast yarn or our marking yarn, we are ready to do 2 rounds of regular stitches. So now we're going to move our yarn up again. So 2 rows down, it was after and before. So now we're going to do after. So just get it out of the way. Do your first 3 double crochets into that space. And flip your yarn over the top to mark our new round. And pause the video, keep working around 2 more rows of just regular stitches. So 3 double crochets into every space all the way around. And I'll meet you when you get back to your marking yarn after you've done 2 rounds of regular stitches. So I've done my 2 rows of just regular stitches on top of my increase round. I'm back to the marking yarn or a contrast yarn, and you can see how it is dishing up on the edges. That is like the saucer we're talking about. So when it dishes up like this, when you lay it flat, you smooth out the center, and it dishes up like this. That means we are ready for an increase round. Looks like that on the edge. And then we can check our yarn. We went after and we went before, so we're going to go after for the next marking yarn, moving it up. So 3 double crochets into that same space. And then move up and over our marking yarn or that contrast yarn. For this round, we're going to be doing our increase. So that is regular increase. So 3 double crochets into each of 2 spaces. So there's our first space and our second space. And into the third, our increase. 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets. Just like that. So now I can pause the video, keep working around regular increase, regular increase all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get back to your contrast yarn. When you get back to our marking yarn, we went before and then after, so we're going to go before. So just flip it over your work, and we're going to start 3 rounds of just regular stitches. So 3 double crochets into each stitch for 3 rounds. So you can pause the video, keep working around 3 double crochets into each space all the way around. You're going to do that for 3 rounds. And then I'll meet you back. I'm going to show you how to adjust your increases for the size you want your blanket to be. So 3 rounds, regular stitches, and I'll meet you right back here. So I've done my 3 rows of just regular stitches, and yes, I changed to my main one now. So just check what we did with our contrast yarn. We went after, we went before, so we want to go after. So I'm just going to do my 3 double crochets into that space. And then toss my yarn over the top of my work. And now for this round, we're going to do increases of regular, and then our increase. So we're doing 3 sets of double crochets before we do an increase, or in between each increase, we're going to do 3 sets of double crochets. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So 3 sets. 1, 2, 3 of our double crochets. And now into the 4th, we are going to do our increase. So into the 4th space, an increase, 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 double crochets. Just like that. So you can pause the video and keep working around regular increase, regular increase, reg ink, all the way around. And I'll meet you when you get back to our contrast yarn or our marking yarn right up there. So now we are back at our contrast yarn or our marking yarn. So my two increases are right here. I'm going to do another one right in the center, or even just here. I'm just going to do an increase. So I'm just going to flip my yarn and do an increase into that very same space, just to even them out. So if in doubt and there's a big space without an increase during an increase round, go ahead and just throw one in. So now it is time to do just regular rounds until our blanket starts dishing up. And I think you have the gist now of how we are building this blanket, of how we are designing it and building it. And you are ready to keep going on your own. As you are working on your blanket, you're going to wonder, should I increase? Should I not increase? So find a flat spot wherever you are and just start smoothing out your blanket. So smooth it out on the bottoms so it's nice and flat, and then all the way up to one spot. And then if it looks like this, let me move it for you down, where there is extra stitches, that means you don't need to increase yet. So keep going until when you smooth it out, it also stays super flat everywhere. It's flat, but it'll also start scooping up on the edges. When it scoops up like a dish, that is when we increase. So flatten it, smooth it out. If there's anything extra, do not increase yet. Then when your blanket starts to, I call it a saucer. Do you see how it is like curling up on the edges? This is extreme. I have it curling up by 2 rows just so it's enough for you to see on the camera. Even if it's curling up by 1 row so it looks like that, just 1 row up, that's still a saucer. Anything would hold in milk. You know, if you spilt your tea, it wouldn't fall off your plate. That is a saucer. So you're doing the same thing. You're smoothing it out everywhere. And instead of being extra stitches, it is curling in on itself. So that is when it is time to do an increase. And that way you can make your blanket as big as you want it to be. And if you want to know exactly how I did mine, this is how I did it. Rounds 19 to 23 are just regular shells, regular stitches. Round 24 is an increase round. We're going to do regular, 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 and then an increase. Then we're doing 6 regular rounds. So rounds 25 to 30 are just regular stitches. Round 31 is an increase round, and we are doing 4 regular sets in between our increases. So regular, 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 and an increase. Rounds 32 to 37 are just regular rounds. Round 38 is an increase round with 4 regular sets of stitches in between our increases. And then rounds 39 to 44 are regular stitches. Round 45 is another increase round with 4 sets of regular stitches in between those increases. And rounds 46 to 52 are regular. Round 53, we are going to add 1 more set of those regular clusters in between the increases. So regular, 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 and regular, and then an increase. And then from rounds 54 to 60, those are just regular stitches. And you're, of course, welcome to keep going, making yours any size you like. So to color control your cake so that you end with the same color that you start with from the new cake, just look for where that color is. So I've just finished cantaloupe and started this light pinky kind of color, this petal pink. So that is going to be somewhere in between the orange and the pink. So I'm just going to push along the side, just keeping that yarn cake together while I look for that pink yarn, which is there. And I'm just going to work my fingers around and pull out that center orange, like that. You can do it a lot tidier than me. That was messy. Now, I'm going to take all of this off. I'm going to end my blanket there. on this orange. So right where that color change is, I'm going to cut the yarn. So this is the center of our cake all on its own. We're going to end with this. So now I join with a magic knot, especially if it's an acrylic yarn. If you are using a natural fiber or a different, like a softer yarn, you can join your yarn in a different way, like sewing your tails properly. But if you can pull your yarn really snug and it doesn't break, magic knot is golden. To make your magic knot, you tie your new yarn around your old yarn and your old yarn around your new yarn. Snug those tails down and slide them together. Give it another pull. Pull your tails again. Make sure everything is nice and snug. And then you can just cut off those tails. So that is our working yarn joined. So now the center of our center is going to match the outside of our cake. So these can get joined together as well. I do this later, but you will take the outside yarn of your cake and the inside yarn of your center cake, what we removed. Those are the same color. So tie those together, and then you'll finish off your big cake, and then you'll finish your little baby center cake, and that's how you color control a cake. When your blanket is the size you want it to be, or you've run out of yarn, or you just want to finish it off, this is how you're going to do it. Now, I do have more yarn left, plus I have my little center piece. I probably won't have half a cake left, but I want to finish on around with this dark purple kind of color because the center of my blanket is really light, and I want to do a light gray for the border, and I think the light gray will look best coming off of this dark purple right here. So you can stop your blanket whenever you want to, or you can make it as big as you like. But for me, I'm going to be finishing up because I'm almost done that purple yarn. I don't have enough to go around again. So into the space before our marking yarn, we're going to do 3 half double crochets. So a little bit of a shorter stitch. Into the space after, we're going to do 3 single crochets. And now we're going to do a little invisible join just to get that right back down. And you can see how we've really sloped that nicely. So just go ahead and cut your yarn. You could do a chain 1 and cut your yarn and secure it that way. But I'm just going to pull my yarn up through that last stitch and thread my needle. And now I'm going to put my needle into this stitch. So I'm skipping a stitch really. I'm going to go into this stitch here, the last stitch of that set of 3, underneath both strands of the V. And then keeping an eye on where my yarn came from, I'm going to go right back down into that same stitch. And then just snug it up. So we like how it looks, just like that. And now go ahead and sew in your tail. That is where we have stepped up or down. Now we can flip our blanket upside down and we can get rid of our stitch marker from the very beginning. Well, not our stitch marker. I guess it is our stitch marker. And our marking yarn. We can pull that right out. Yay! If you worked around your center tail, you can cut that off as well. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Now we just have our stitch markers left to count our rows. I'm leaving mine in because I'm still writing the pattern for this, but of course now you can take all your stitch markers out as well. And now we are ready to put a cute little border on it if you want to. You could leave yours just like this. It would still be obviously super, super cute. Now for our border, we want to be working into the back of our work. So there is the front, the cute little stitches, and our back is our cute little macaroni, also beautiful. You can insert your hook anywhere. I'm going to insert my hook a few spaces before our slope, just so it's easier for me to film it. Grab a loop of your border yarn. Put that loop on your hook, bring it through, and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just holding it along the back of your work, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Into the next space, we're going to do 1 single crochet, chain 2, and into the next space, 1 single crochet. So this is what we're going to be doing for all the way around. So a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. Just into the spaces, so chain 2, single crochet, and now we're right before our join, before our step up. So I'm just going into that big space. And then after, I'm going to go into the space between my single crochets and the half double crochets. So it's a little harder to see. You have to trace that yarn back. Let me get my needle so I can show you. You have to trace this yarn back that goes into the space right there. See that strand right there? You want to go underneath it. That is going to be the space. So that is a little bit harder to see, obviously, but we're just going to pop our hook in and make 1 single crochet and chain 2. Now into the next normally large space, single crochet, and now you can pause the video and keep working around. 1 single crochet and chain 2 all the way around, and I will meet you when you get back to where we started. Now, don't worry if your blanket is all curled up. These chain 2 spaces, they do make your blanket a little bit tight, but they will also help our blanket keep shape. So my blanket is also all curled up and looking funny on that edge. Don't worry about it. So when you get back to where we joined, or where we started with our border, single crochet into that last space and chain 2, same as we have been. Now we're going to slip stitch straight in to that chain, the first chain we made. So slip stitch and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This counts as our first double crochet. And now turn your work. We're going to work into the front of our blanket again. And into the space, we're going to do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3, and into the stitch, into that single crochet, we're going to do 1 double crochet. So 1 double crochet into the stitch and 3 double crochets into the space. 1, 2, and 3. Into the stitch, 1 double crochet, and into the space, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. 1 double crochet into the stitch, 3 double crochets into the space. So you can pause the video and keep working around doing 3 double crochets into the space and 1 double crochet into the stitch all the way around, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, I've done my double crochet into the stitch, so 3 into the space. 1, 2, and 3. And our chain counts as our first stitch, our first double crochet from the stitch. So now we are ready to do an invisible join to join. You could do a slip stitch and a chain 1, but I think a invisible join on a blanket looks really nice, and it's super, super easy. So if you haven't done one before, just go ahead and cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle. And before we have joined, just after that last stitch, pull your hook up and your yarn all the way through. Thread your needle. If you're using a sharp tip needle, use the blunt tip just to start your invisible join. And now look at that chain the top of our chain right here. We're going to work into it just like it was a stitch, or just like we would be slip stitching to with a crochet hook, but we're going to be popping our needle in. So pop your needle through that stitch. And keep an eye on where it's coming from. We want to go right back down where it came from. So into where we would be slip stitching to, and back down where it came from, and then just shrink that up and adjust it so it looks like it is a regular stitch. Sew in your tail and you're finished. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video right there, and stay hooked.